In our society, the pressure to be thin is all around us. In the United States, we commonly associate thinness with youth, beauty, and strength. After the stress and imposed isolations of the 2020 COVID year, many of us are feeling particularly large, and the pressure to be thin is even more. We use the word thin to describe people who are arguably not thin. We often use the word thin when what we really mean is low body fat. In our society today, there's a cultural movement towards body acceptance, regardless of the impacts that has on the body itself. What I think we actually want, however, is perceived health. How people perceive our health is not an exact science because of cultural influences, but more accurately, it's a way to describe what humans find attractive. Loosely described, what an animal wants is for other members of their species to look at them, subconsciously judge them, and think, hey, they're healthy. Naturally, with humans, it can be more complicated, but it's a start. For most of us, our education about anatomy and physiology was limited to whatever was covered in the 7th grade, supplemented by an occasional article in a fitness magazine. The advice often seems contradictory, confusing, and has no right answer. In reality, this is because most people focus on their desire for perfection without understanding the natural range of human performance. We are culturally becoming attuned to the idea that if you can't be the best, there's no reason to try. For example, many people don't jog at all because they can't run as fast as they think they should. The fastest runners can run a mile in under 4 minutes. A healthy person can walk a mile in 15 minutes. There's a wide range of possibility in between. How does this apply to our goal of thinness? Thinness just implies a lack of body mass. It's usually measured in two different ways: size of clothing or weight on a scale. But there's a very important reason that those are very poor ways to measure perceived health. Thinness doesn't say anything about our weight, strength, endurance, or overall health. In our culture, there's a tendency to stereotype strength as an opposite of brains. One doesn't need strength if one doesn't do manual labor that requires it. Wanting to be thin is easy and absolute, but thinness doesn't care whether you are gaining or losing muscle or fat, and that matters for a simple physical reason. Fat is much less dense than muscle. A pound of fat has a larger volume than a pound of muscle. Practically, that means the human body can get heavier and heavier while getting smaller and smaller, as fat is lost and muscle is gained. In practical terms, until you get to serious bodybuilding muscle at the same height and weight, a person with less body fat and more muscle is smaller in volume or in circumference than a person with more body fat. Similarly, until you get to extremes, it's less important how much body fat you have, and more important what percentage of body fat you have. That means from an aesthetic standpoint, what really matters is how your muscle and fat complement each other to give an overall impression of strength and health. The more muscle you have, the more fat you can get away with and still look healthy. Males typically need a minimum of 5% body fat to live, and women typically need 10% for basic functions. Fat serves as a source of calories, as well as storing critical vitamins and minerals necessary to survive. Average healthy body fat ranges between 18 to 24% in men and 25 to 30% in women. Fat ranges that are below that are really a matter of personal preferences. And above that, fat begins to have health implications. When we start to think about creating an ideal body for the life we want to lead, we can start with picking a body fat target percentage. The difficult part is figuring out what the lean mass of the percentage should be. We want our body fat to be 20%, but 20% of what? What many of us are tempted to do is pick a random number on the scale from our youth and try to get back to that number. That line of logic leads to sacrificing lean mass in order to achieve our goals, and that's not very ideal. Let's look at the average body broken down into sections by weight. Our body weight has some components that change very slowly and some components that change very quickly. Slowly changing components include the skeletal system, skins, organs, and nerves. Striated muscle, which is the muscle used for movement, changes more rapidly, and fat deposits can change more slowly over time. What changes the most, and what makes up 50 to 60% of our body weight, is the water that's contained literally everywhere in our body. This percentage, due to water, varies by age, sex, muscle mass, and the amount of fat. There are many methods for measuring the body fat percentage, and the remaining percentage is your lean mass. As a rule of thumb, about half of what's left is muscle, and the other half is skeletal, fluids, and organs, including the skin. If that's what a body is, how do we come up with a goal of what we want the body to be? It's surprisingly hard to calculate, although it's becoming easier to measure. Without going to a CT scanner to measure your body composition, new biometric impedance scales are providing a more and more accurate measurement to assist. Once you know your current body fat percentage, you can estimate your lean mass, and then use that to figure out your goal weight by setting it to be your new target lean mass percentage. That lets you estimate what your goal weight might need to be without having to change your lean mass and your muscle mass a lot in the same time frame. For example, if a woman was 200 pounds and 60% body fat, her lean mass is only 80 pounds. If she wants to bring her body fat down to a much healthier 30%, she knows she wants to bring her lean mass from 40% now to 70% in the future, and she wants to do it by losing body fat. That lean mass of 80 pounds is 70% of 115 pounds. So 115 pounds with 30% body fat might be her goal, and a major body composition change, but it doesn't require gaining any muscle. 115 pounds with 30% body fat is still 34 pounds of body fat. She could basically diet down to 115 pounds and end up with 30% body fat eventually. Another method is to use the MetLife charts and use the largest number for your height. That's the average weight that will have the most muscle. For example, a MetLife ideal weight for a man at 6 foot is between 160 to 196 pounds. A 160-pound man at 6 foot won't have very much muscle or fat, and one that's 196 pounds is likely to have both in a good balance. Remember, this is just an estimate taken by looking at healthy measurements of existing people and looking at correlations, but it still helps us create a better goal than thin. A new goal may be, as a 6-foot male, deciding to aim for being 196 pounds and around 20% body fat, instead of wanting to be thin. It's a simple, concrete goal, and it's very obtainable. A 5'3" woman who is currently obsessed with getting back to a high school weight of 110 pounds might instead decide to try and be around 130 pounds, but 30% body fat, or 135 pounds, but 25% body fat, and love how she looks. Remember, fat is bigger than muscle. Someone with 30% body fat at 127 pounds is carrying almost 5 pounds more fat than someone with 135 pounds and 25% body fat, and it's taking up more space under their skin than the additional 8 pounds of muscle that the person at 135 pounds is carrying. In reality, the woman at 135.25 is carrying the same amount of fat as the woman at 115 pounds, but she has 20 pounds more muscle. In reality, she's likely wearing smaller sizes than the much lighter woman. With that in mind, Determining an ideal weight and a body fat percentage goal might be the best for you. These are broad goals and can take a long time to reach. People often believe they need severe goals to achieve their aims and set impossible goals for themselves. To plan a successful body composition change, it's important to recognize what the components of the body are and to develop an achievable goal that includes building strength and retaining muscle. In the next unit, we'll discuss how we can use that goal to shape our nutrition goals.